I set up hidden cameras at my home and my jaw dropped to the floor when I saw what was doing my pregnant wife with my friend. It's a sunny day in California, and life is just about as picture-perfect as it can get. I'm living the dream with my wife Jane, who's 5 months pregnant with our first child. Our life together is a collection of perfect snapshots, each moment brighter than the last. But like a sudden storm brewing on a clear day, something starts to feel off. Jane begins to act peculiarly, constantly glued to her phone, laughing at messages only she could see and guarding her phone with an intensity that would put Fort Knox to shame. My gut churns, warning bells ringing in my head. Something's up, and I decide to take action. Paranoid or not, I feel the need to protect our happy home from whatever was lurking in the shadows. So I install hidden cameras around our home, unsure of what I would find. Fast forward a couple of weeks, Jane decides to have a girls' night with her best friend, Lisa. A night of wine, laughter, and chick flicks. Or so I thought. To my surprise, it wasn't Lisa who graced our doorstep that evening, but her boyfriend, Mark. My heart sank as I watched the footage, my jaw dropping at the sight of Jane and Mark, cozying up on our couch, their laughter echoing through our home, bouncing off the walls lined with our shared memories. I felt a cold wave of dread wash over me as the scene shifted to our bedroom. Our sanctuary, the very room we had dreamt of introducing to our unborn child, was now tainted with betrayal. I was sickened, a nauseating cocktail of anger, disbelief, and heartbreak bubbling within me. In a state of shock, I immediately call Lisa, who was just as taken aback as I was. We decide to confront them together, our shared pain and fury fueling us. As we enter our home, their laughter fills the air, a cruel mockery of our pain. I hold back Lisa, her fury threatening to explode. I calm her down, reminding her that Jane was pregnant, no matter how betrayed we felt. We ascend the stairs and step into our bedroom. The sight that greeted us was pure betrayal. Their faces morphed from surprise to guilt as they saw us standing there, a mirror to our heartbreak. Accusations flew, angry words filling the room. Mark was ejected from the house, a stunned Lisa trailing behind him, her heart shattered. Jane, drenched in tears and regret, begged for forgiveness. But I was done. I demanded a DNA test on our unborn child, needing to confirm my worst fears. Months later, our baby girl was born, her innocent eyes wide open, oblivious to the storm that had surrounded her birth. The DNA results confirmed my worst fears. I was not the father, Mark was, but he refused to have anything to do with Jane or his daughter. Feeling a strange blend of relief and sadness, I packed up my life and returned to my homeland, Wales. The salty sea air and comforting Welsh lilt slowly stitched up the wounds that betrayal had left behind. But the story doesn't end there. You see, I had a plan. I had been hurt, and I wanted Jane to understand the pain she had caused. I began to spread rumors about Mark, rumors that painted him as a deadbeat, a cheater, and a coward. Word got around, and soon Mark's reputation was in tatters. He lost friends, his job, and worst of all, the respect of his family. Jane, left alone with a child in a tarnished relationship, had to face the consequences of her actions. The moral of this tale? Always trust your gut. It's rarely wrong. Karma, as they say, has a funny way of turning the tables, and life always finds a way to serve up its own twisted version of justice. As I settled into my new life in Wales, I kept a distant eye on the life I left behind. Jane, left to face the harsh reality of her actions, was struggling. She was now a single mother with a child whose father wanted nothing to do with her. Mark, meanwhile, was facing the fallout of the rumors I had sown. He lost his job, his friends turned their backs on him, and his family lost all respect for him. It was harsh, but fair. He had played a part in shattering my life, and now he was reaping what he sowed. I kept my revenge a secret, carrying the satisfaction of my vengeance like a hidden trophy. Jane and Mark had betrayed me in the worst possible way, and though the pain still lingered, I found a sense of closure in knowing they were facing the consequences of their actions. It was a cold comfort, but a comfort nonetheless. Back in Wales, I found solace in the familiarity of my homeland. The The smell of the salty sea, the comforting lilt of the Welsh language, and the warmth of my family began to heal the scars that betrayal had left behind. I started to rebuild my life, brick by brick, learning to trust again, to hope again. The echoes of my past life still haunted me, but they were gradually replaced by the laughter of my nieces and nephews, the comforting wisdom of my parents, and the camaraderie of my old friends. As I stood on the cliffs overlooking the sea, I realized that while my California dream had been shattered, a new dream was taking shape here in the rugged beauty of Wales. I had been given a second chance, an opportunity to start afresh. When I opened my wife's computer, I collapsed to my knees because I found a horrible photo proofs of her infidelity. It was the year 2014, and our journey had stretched over a solid 8 years, with 6 of those bound by the sacred vows of matrimony. Throughout her college years, I stood by her side, offering unwavering support as she pursued her dream of becoming a teacher. However, as fate would have it, her inaugural year in the profession proved to be a nightmare, as is often the case for educators. I can vividly recall the despair in her voice as she declared, "I never want to step foot in a classroom again." I couldn't bear to see her give up after investing 6 long years in her education, even if she had changed her major not once but twice. I urged her not to abandon her passion on account of a single rough patch. We had a massive fight, and in the heat of the moment, after years of supporting her, I lost my temper. "Fine, give up then, but we can't survive on one income," I snapped. Within a few months, she found a job that paid far less than her teaching career. I thought we were managing fine, until my dad passed away. Our relationship had always been complicated. My parents divorced when I was 12, and he was absent, often drowning his sorrows at the bar. But as his health deteriorated, he tried to reconnect with his family in his own peculiar way. Unfortunately, he was running out of time. They took my dad off life support and said he had only a few hours left. But somehow he held on for 10 long days. It was pure agony for me. I was a complete wreck. When he finally passed away, we discovered the harsh reality of his financial mess. He left us with a mountain of debt to tackle. Needless to say, I wasn't the most pleasant person to be around. I was grappling with the aftermath of my dad's mistakes, simultaneously angry at him, yet mourning the loss of my father. If any of you have experienced the pain of losing a loved one, you understand the immense difficulty it brings. One moment you're feeling all right, and the next, tears well up uncontrollably. Now let's fast forward a few years to the winter of 2017. A mutual friend, and the head honcho of our local NerdCon, spills the beans on Facebook that he's getting a divorce because his wife was unfaithful. Coincidentally, my ex happens to be in the area and pays him a visit, or so she claims, but I'm convinced this is when the affair began. I found it a bit peculiar that she stayed there for a whopping 5 hours, but being the trusting person I am, I bought her explanation that they were just having a chat. As the months rolled by and spring arrived, she grew increasingly chummy with him. It started to bother me, and I mustered the courage to voice my discomfort with their frequent conversations. My concerns were dismissed as mere paranoia, and let me tell you, I had every right to be suspicious, considering she went behind my back to have a little chat with an ex before we tied the knot. She claimed it was for closure. Yeah, right. Fast forward to the last weekend of April 2018, when I had a business trip scheduled in Vancouver, BC. She takes advantage of the fact that she's home alone. She always hated being by herself, often roping in her mother to keep her company when I was away on weekends. Now that's a red flag if I've ever seen one. And announces that she's going on a completely platonic date with this guy. I wasn't thrilled about it, knowing this guy's vulnerable state and how it could spell trouble. But she goes ahead with it anyway. At that time, we had this geolocating feature on our phones, supposedly to prevent texting while driving. It allowed us to check each other's GPS location to see if we were on our way home. Her idea, which definitely raised a red flag. Out of pure paranoia, I decide to check if she's actually home. She insists that she is, but the tracker tells a different story. She's still out with him. I confront her. letting her know that I'm well aware of her whereabouts and that it's getting late, so she should head home. Well, she didn't take it too well and decided to give me the silent treatment for the rest of the night. I pushed through the next day, trying to focus on work. But then she drops the bombshell. She's planning to go to his house again. I'm furious at this point and beg her not to go, telling her that this guy is vulnerable and I have a gut feeling he'll try to make a move on her. But she brushes off my concerns, dismisses me, and decides to turn off her GPS tracker. Sunday arrives, and as I'm on the flight back home, she suddenly starts acting all cutesy and sweet. Alarm bells are ringing loudly in my head. Something is definitely wrong. I arrive home late, having to hitch a ride because she didn't show up as planned. When I enter, I find her sprawled on the couch, fast asleep. The following week is filled with odd behavior, as she gaslights me into thinking I'm overly possessive and paranoid. It's not until the weekend that I discover she had only kissed him after a long, heartfelt conversation. She claims our marriage isn't worth saving. Desperate to salvage our relationship, I spend 2 days doing everything I can think of. The pick-me dance. But she's made up her mind. Then, she decides to take the dog for a walk, and in a moment of ultimate paranoia, I log into her tablet and open her email. And there, I find the heart-wrenching profession of love to this guy, along with her desire to leave me. Crushed beyond words, the room starts spinning and I completely lose control. Gasping for air, I dial her number, my voice trembling as I confront her with my newfound knowledge. She rushes home, and with a heavy heart, I pose the question, "Do you want to be with him?" Her response cuts like a knife. "I think I do." Anger consumes me, fueling my words as I declare my need for distance. Seeking solace, I seek refuge in a hotel room for the night. Meanwhile, she abandons our home, seeking comfort in his arms. Left with the responsibility of our loyal companion, I hastily check out and return to care for our beloved pup. Despite the shattered fragments of our relationship, I gather every wedding photo, every cherished memory, and lay them bare on the kitchen table, a bittersweet tableau of our past 11 years together. Consumed by anger, I unleashed my fury, shattering the wedding photo against the wall. I dialed her number, demanding she retrieve her belongings, assuring her they would be waiting on the porch. Thankfully, my brother, my savior, lent a helping hand as we piled up her stuff. Admittedly, I could have handled the situation with more grace. They say hindsight is 20/20, but the painful truth remained. The woman I loved, the one I had sacrificed for and devoted myself to, had found solace in the arms of another man. Without wasting a moment, she swiftly moves in with him, making quick work of changing her cell phone plan from mine to his. And to add insult to injury, this despicable character has the audacity to attend the convention where I served as staff, proudly declaring their love and issuing an ultimatum: support them or face expulsion. Naturally, I find myself barred from the very event I once held dear. The pain cuts deeper as I realize that not only have I lost my wife, but I've also lost the support of the tribe I believed would stand by my side. As the convention unfolds 4 weeks later, she flaunts her newfound happiness, bombarding social media with images of her entangled with him. While she jets off on extravagant trips, showcasing her newfound love, I rely on the dwindling support of my family and a handful of loyal friends to orchestrate the arduous task of moving out and leaving behind the remnants of our shared life before the lease expires. Every time I asked for help, she had an excuse ready. And to add insult to injury, she started a new job the very week she cheated on me, right at the same place where I was the IT help desk lead. That summer took its toll on me. I shed a ton of weight, smoked a pack a day, and barely had an appetite. While I spent my birthday in solitude, she paraded her new man before her family, who quickly abandoned me and embraced him with open arms. I foolishly fell into the trap of trying to win her back, pleading with her multiple times during those long summer days to break free from that toxic relationship and find her own path. It was then she had the audacity to tell me how she fell out of love with me after my dad passed away. She claimed I was too consumed with grief and neglected her needs. During one of our final conversations, she even tried to make a move on me, but I shut it down. Filled with anger, I snapped at her, telling her that this ain't some sappy romance movie like The Notebook, and she needed to grow the hell up. As a final blow, she decided to take the other man on the trip we had planned together to Ireland and England, the very places my ancestors hailed from in the early 1900s. Thankfully, I had blocked her and anyone connected to her on social media, so I didn't have to witness the whole damn thing plastered all over the internet. Shortly thereafter, I took care of the divorce paperwork myself, bringing an end to it. Since then, I haven't had a face-to-face conversation with her. We exchanged a couple of emails to settle some matters, but apart from that, she relies on her parents as intermediaries if she needs anything. I maintain strict no contact with her and anyone connected to her. Unfortunately, that meant losing several friends who chose to take her side or prioritize their involvement in the convention over our friendship. However, in the midst of this chaotic ordeal, I discovered an exceptional therapist. With his guidance, I came to understand that the whole mess was far from normal, and I was just doing my best in an extremely messed up situation, as he put it. Through therapy sessions and recounting the events, I realized that there was nothing I could have done to prevent it. Her excuses held no ground and couldn't justify her betrayal. In the end, I discovered that I possessed strong coping skills and did everything within my power given the circumstances. I made a conscious decision to improve myself and let go of all the torment and misery that had consumed me. I have my good days and bad. Sometimes I catch wind of her life and it stings a little, but it no longer knocks me down. Turns out she tied the knot with that guy this summer, right after he finally divorced his ex. Took him 3 long years, but he was already living with another woman. Word on the street is she's lost a ton of weight, looks worn out, and is under his thumb. The hardest part for me is not having our dog anymore. She ended up with custody in the divorce, and I miss that furry companion dearly. She even used the dog as a ploy to manipulate and mess with my head, but I had to put an end to that game. It was a tough call, but necessary for my own well-being. Despite the hardships of 2018, there were silver linings. I welcomed a beloved puppy into my life, finding solace in her presence. Not having children turned out to be a blessing, as my ex-wife's aversion to motherhood clashed with my deep desire to become a father. Now, pushing 40 and navigating life during the pandemic, I remain hopeful for the future. Leaving behind the wreckage of our marriage, I reconnected with my family, saving money and pursuing fulfilling hobbies. Gradually, I learned to love myself again, realizing that I was a supportive and kind husband, not the monster she portrayed. As D-Day plus 3 years approaches, I reflect on my journey with newfound strength. I never bought into the whole karma concept. Too many times I've witnessed people getting away with their wrongdoings without facing any repercussions. So, I stopped waiting for karma to strike my ex, because it wasn't doing me any good mentally or emotionally. But then, fate had its own plans. I spotted her in the midst of a bustling brewfest, and I almost didn't recognize her. She looked utterly dreadful. It seems that whatever she's going through with the sorry excuse for a human being she left me for and married is taking a toll on her. She's emaciated, resembling those gym enthusiasts who are so obsessed with their fitness that they appear drained and shriveled. A stark contrast from the woman she once was. At just 33, she easily looks a decade older. Instinctively, I averted my gaze and avoided any eye contact. According to my brother, she caught sight of both of us standing in line for a beer and promptly made a swift exit. Later, while reconnecting with old friends who stood by me through it all, I received some interesting tidbits of information. It turns out that my ex and her husband, the infamous AP, are facing financial hardships. The convention they arrogantly rule with an iron fist and booted me and anyone who dared oppose them is now under investigation by the IRS. Not only that, but the people around them are finally seeing their true colors and realizing what toxic a-holes they truly are. As for my reaction to hearing about her sorry state or the downward spiral of her life, she brought this upon herself.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike, what have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.